Okay, welcome everybody. Sorry for a few seconds of nothingness. I've just managed to get everything set up and I think we're ready to start. Let me check. Yeah, it looks like you've got the whole board on there, more or less. Okay, so we'll start with chapter 51. If anyone's uncertain what I mean by chapter 51, I'm talking about the Advanced Phrasal Verbs book from Cambridge University Press by Michael McCarthy and Felicity Odell. It's an excellent book and it's what I'm using with a lot of students at the moment to practice phrasal verbs. Phrasal verbs are very important because they're so common. I think a lot of students try to use exotic and interesting words that they take from literature, and the problem with doing this is that a lot of literature is more than 100 years old, and when you actually check how often native speakers use some of these literary words, it can be very, very rare. Whereas these phrasal verbs, I guarantee that you will hear these in almost every film or TV show that you ever watch. You will hear people using them. They're very common, and that's what makes them so useful. I mean, really, you want to use language that everybody's using in England at the moment on the streets, and in America and in Australia. You don't want to use words which appeared once in an Edgar Allan Poe poem 250 years ago, or however long, probably 200 or even less, 150 years ago. It may sound good to some people, but a lot of people won't understand you. Whereas these, everyone will understand you. So if you sound someone out, you try to get their opinion about something. So it's when you have a new idea and you want to see what people think about your idea. So you sound them out to find out if they think it's a good idea or not. It's when you want someone's opinion on your plan or your idea, something like that. Okay, if you confide in someone, that means you choose that person as your confidant. Yeah, you choose that person and they're a trustworthy person, the kind of person you can speak to about your problems. And so if you choose to confide in someone, you trust that person and you want to share your secrets with them. You want to let them in on your secrets. And I also put up here, turn to someone, because you turn to someone when you need advice. You maybe turn to your auntie when you need advice and then confide in her. So turn to is very similar to confide in. It's you turn to someone for advice, and I would even put that up there, turn to someone for advice, but you confide you confide in someone, you tell them your secrets. Okay, to root something out. This is when you want to get something from someone, or you want to find someone, but it's very, very difficult. So it's when you try to find information, which is very difficult, or when you want to find someone, which is very difficult. The word root obviously means tree root, and if anybody's ever uprooted a tree, you'll realise that it's very difficult, yeah? That would be to uproot a tree. But the idea is that you're getting down into the roots to find something. So a journalist might have to go to a foreign country in order to root out information. You could also say, if you're in the military and you know that there's a spy in your division, you need to root out the spy, and it means to extract that spy. So you could root information out, but you could also root people out, and the idea is that they're very difficult to find when you root them out or root the information out. Now again, this works very well with the next three, very similar, and they do work well with journalists, same as ferret out in fact. If you can worm some information out of somebody, or wring some information out of somebody, or drag some information out of somebody, this means to extract information. And they're all slightly different, but they're used in slightly different ways. There are different collocations here. And so you can certainly drag the truth out of someone or wring the truth out of someone. And the idea is that you apply loads of pressure to do this. So it's not quite the same as root out, although similar. But if the police have a suspect, they try to wring the truth out of the suspect. They try to drag the truth out of him. But you can even wring money out of someone. If you're, I don't know, let's think of a good example here. Maybe one of your friends owes you money, and he's the kind of person who doesn't like paying back money that he owes people, and so you have to try to wring the money out of him. You're calling him every single day, and eventually you manage to wring that £10 out of him. Worm wouldn't be used with money, and neither would drag. You wouldn't drag the money out of him or worm the... Well, you could worm the money out of him, actually, but it's a different meaning than wring. Because if you worm the money out of him, it sounds to me like you're doing something bad or something negative in order to get the money out of him. Not applying pressure, but being sneaky and crafty to worm the money out of him. And I would say that worm has that sneakiness and craftiness to it. You'll notice below that you can worm out of a duty. You could get out of a duty. Both of these two mean avoid a responsibility. So maybe you have to pick the kids up from school tomorrow, but you decide to worm out of it, to get out of it. So you call your wife and you make up all sorts of lame excuses to worm out of going and picking them up. So worm, it sounds like weasel, and in fact weasel out of something would also be possible. And the idea is that these animals, they're not considered nice animals. I mean, a little wiggly worm, we think of it as a crafty animal, and definitely weasel would be a very crafty animal. And if you weasel out of a task or duty or responsibility, it means you're using all sorts of underhand methods and crafty, dirty tactics to avoid that responsibility. So yeah, they're certainly negative. And when you worm something out of someone, it sounds like you're using craftiness rather than sheer brute force, like wring something out of someone. You should always remember that wring, if you wring the clothes out of water, if your jumper is wet and you wring the clothes out of water, you do that, you wring it out of water. And so there's strength, there's brute force going into wringing the truth out of somebody or wringing the money out of somebody. And same with drag. Drag is when you've got something heavy, and so there's brute force going on. But worm is weaselly, it's more underhand techniques and craftiness. Now if you ferret out some information, it's similar to root out for sure, root something out. But the idea is that you just ask lots and lots and lots of questions. So you work really hard with ferret some information out, ferret something out. And it does work like that, ferret something out. And so this is quite rare, this one, compared to all the others. But it means that you continually work, you bombard the person you're interviewing with questions in order to ferret out the truth. So very similar again to these other ones here, not really to this one in here, which is avoid a responsibility, but well worth remembering for sure. And you should remember that ferret is an animal like worm and weasel. We often have these animal phrasal verbs as well. I should do another lesson on animal phrasal verbs someday. Someday I will. Okay, if you stake out a building, that means that you watch the building all night. The police stake out buildings, and it's when they are watching a suspect. The suspect doesn't know about it, but the police are outside with their binoculars, with their telescopes, and they're staking out the building to find out what's going on there. They obviously have the impression that something illegal is going on there, and so they need to stake out the building in order to arrest the suspects. Now, if the news gets out, or if the news leaks out, I think this chapter was all about news and media. If the news gets out or the news leaks out, the news spreads, yeah? And the idea is that there was some kind of secret which was held back. Maybe the government were holding out on the public and they were keeping something secret, but in the end someone betrayed them and leaked out the story, and the story got out, and the story leaked out. So that's ergative, leak out. You could say someone leaked out the story, or the story leaked out. But you would only say the news got out. You wouldn't say somebody got the story. Well, maybe some people would. Someone got the story out. Maybe. But this one's definitely ergative. Okay, if you whip up support, it's a bit like drum up support. But I wouldn't say whip up business, and that's why I've put this one in brackets. Remember that these phrasal verbs do collocate differently. You drum up business and you can drum up support, but you only whip up support, or you could whip up someone into a frenzy. He whipped him up into a frenzy. Whip up someone into a frenzy. It means get them really excited so that they get so carried away that they're uncontrollable. Whip someone into a frenzy. Or whip up someone into a frenzy. I think both are possible there. You could whip someone into a frenzy or whip up someone into a frenzy. And you should remember that whip is literally that horrible device that people used a long time ago for torture, or, I mean, you'd whip your slaves or something like that, and it's a horrible thing, and it hurts people. But here it can be used positively, because if you whip up support, the idea is that you're whipping people, just like drumming people into following you or into supporting you. Okay, if you dumb down a test, you make it much simpler and easier than it is. You don't make it so difficult, so hard. And I've put water down here, which is going to be coming again down here. But water down means to dilute. If somebody waters down your whiskey, they dilute your whiskey with a load of water. And you could say the test has been dumbed down, it's been made easier. Or you could even say the subject has been watered down, the exam has been watered down. And it also means it has been made easier, simpler. So water down means to dilute, but it also means to make easier, like dumb down, very often used in education. Okay, if you give yourself up, you surrender. I think that's the sense that I need it here. You can give yourself up, you surrender yourself. But if you give up smoking or give up drinking, then you stop those bad habits. You cut them out. As we'll see over here, cut out is the same as give up. In that sense, anyway, of cut out smoking, cut out drinking, give up. If you hold out for something, this can have a couple of different meanings. If you say England are holding out for a draw, it means that they are hoping for a draw. That's the minimum they need maybe to get through into the next round. But it has a second meaning. It could mean survive. So if you say, I don't know, maybe there's a team of scientists in the Arctic, and unfortunately there's a problem. There's some kind of power cut and they're not able to communicate with the outside world and nobody can get to them. You might say something like this: they will be able to hold out for a week without any supplies, because we know that their food supplies and water supplies are enough to see them through 7 days. They're enough to last 7 days. So they will be able to hold out for 7 days. But you could use it with the military as well, meaning they'll be able to survive. So you might say that military unit which is in that area, perhaps they're under attack, perhaps they've been surrounded by enemy forces, and the general says they should be able to hold out for another 24 hours, but after that we're not sure they will, and they might die, or they might be attacked. They might be wiped out. It's another one which is on here somewhere, meaning destroyed, completely, utterly annihilated. So to hold out could mean to survive, but it could also mean to hope for something at the minimum. Okay, if you are called up for military service, or you can just say he's been called up, it makes it clear that he's joined the army, and it's not necessarily from choice. If you join up, then that is your choice. It still means join the army. If you say he's joined up, you could even say he's signed up, although that's not quite so clear. But if you've been called up, they've asked you to join the military. But if you join up, you join the military. So both of them mean join the military in some kind of way. Now, we did bear out in bare phrasal verbs just a few days ago. So if you want to know more about this phrasal verb, you can watch that lesson, or you can type in bear out into Oxford Dictionary and you'll find far more examples than I'm going to give you in this lesson. So if you want examples, please go to Oxford, go to Cambridge, go to Merriam-Webster, and you'll find hundreds. Maybe not hundreds, but lots. So if the evidence bears out your alibi, it means that your alibi holds up. It means that it confirms, it validates, it verifies your alibi. So hopefully, if you are accused of some kind of terrible crime, hopefully the evidence will bear out your alibi, so that you are let off. You are, you know, not punished for the crime. Well, not let off, in fact, but you're set free because you're not guilty. So remember that hold up also means bear out something, but it's intransitive. You say that your alibi holds up. You wouldn't say the evidence held up your alibi, but you would say your alibi holds up, or the evidence bears out my alibi. Okay, if you hush something up, you cover it up. Very similar, hush up, cover it up. To hush is shh, be quiet. And so you can see how hush up means exactly the same thing as cover up, but as a noun we'd only say a cover up. We wouldn't say a hush up. Whereas we can say a cover up, certainly. There are millions of cover ups in the newspapers every day. And a cover up is a conspiracy, basically. It's when a group of people try to hide the truth. And so you can always read about cover ups in the newspapers. Now, if someone papers over something, this is a very visual phrasal verb. I want you to imagine you're decorating your house, you're doing your house out in a Victorian style, and when you're doing this, you notice a few cracks, and you think, well, I could get some polyfiller, I could get some substance, some material which I could fill the cracks in with, I could put them in the cracks, or I could just put the wallpaper straight over the crack, and no one will see the crack at all. So you've completely hidden the crack. Well, this phrasal verb is not just used in a literal sense like that, because you certainly can use it like that, he papered over the crack. It's also used for when somebody hides their mistakes, and or not just mistakes, but weaknesses, errors, disadvantages, something like that. If you're trying to cover up your mistakes or your errors or your disadvantages, then you're papering over the cracks. And so the government very often have to paper over the cracks because they've made a mistake, something like that, and they try and cover up their mistakes. They just try and paper over the mistakes and say everything's fine, don't worry, relax, it's all good, when actually if you look behind the wallpaper you'll see that there are a lot of cracks beneath. If you level with someone, or if somebody is on the level, we say he's on the level, and it means he's honest. He's straight, he's flat, he's honest. We associate flat and straight things and square things with honesty, whereas something crooked is very often dishonest. Something bent is very often criminal. And so when you level with someone, you tell the truth. You tell them exactly how things are. You are honest with them when you level with someone. So of course we all want people to level with us, to be honest. If you spy on someone, you watch them, and maybe you use some binoculars, maybe you use a telescope, who knows what you use, but you are spying on them. I think that's quite an easy one. Now, make out is very good. I want to deal here with make out that, but I'll quickly mention that make out can mean perceive. If you can't see the sign miles away, it's a foggy day, it's raining, you're trying to see what the sign says, but you're saying, no, I can't make out what that sign says. Or you're on the telephone, somebody's speaking very, very quietly, and you say, I'm sorry, I can't make out a word that you're saying. I can't make out anything. It means I can't hear you or I can't see you. That's one meaning of make out. But a second meaning of make out is pretend. It's a direct synonym of pretend. You can say he pretended to be a Frenchman, or he made out that he was a Frenchman. Or you could say he pretended to be a doctor, or he made out that he was a doctor. So make out is a synonym of pretend as well. And it's this one could be used in a lot of different situations with a lot of different nouns. So it's well worth remembering. You'll see it again for sure. Now, if you let something out or blurt something out, you reveal something, especially this one. When you blurt something out, it sounds like you've revealed a secret that should have remained hidden. Something that should have been hushed up and should have been kept quiet has been blurted out. So I suppose when people drink too much, they very often blurt things out that they regret. But you can also say he let the secret out. He let the cat out the bag, or out of the bag if you prefer. It should have out of, but I think we very often drop that of in out of phrasal verbs, like get out the car. Okay, if you dig something up, you literally use a spade to dig and find something in the ground. So you could dig up treasure. If you've got a metal detector, you hear a noise, you need to dig whatever that piece of metal is up. You need to dig it up. But you can also dig up information. And so dig up could mean investigate, and you can dig up something, you can dig through the case files like Sherlock does in elementary all the time. Dig up, dig through, and then it means search for information, a bit like root something out and all of these search for information ones. Okay, if you play along with someone or go along with someone, it means that you make out that you agree with them, or maybe even not pretend that you agree with them, but you say, okay, I agree with you, let's go along with that, let's play along with that and see where it leads. So perhaps somebody claims that 2 + 2 = 5, and you say, okay, let's go along with that. If 2 + 2 = 5, then blah blah blah. We're going along with what they've said. We're saying, okay, let's pretend to agree with you for a few seconds and see where that leads. That's when you go along with someone or play along with someone. But you could do this in all sorts of situations. You can use this in a lot of different situations, and I'd say they're both identical. Let's say that one of your friends, or you meet someone on the street and he is pretending to be homeless. And you can see that he's not homeless. It's very unlikely. Maybe he's wearing some nice new trainers that you can't afford. But you decide to play along with him and give him some money just to get rid of him. That would be playing along with him or going along with him. It means pretending to believe his lie in order usually to get rid of them, or who knows what it's in order to. It doesn't matter, but you're pretending to believe that person. Okay, I mean, it doesn't have to be when someone's lying though. Let's make this really clear. You might disagree with some philosopher or scientist, but you play along with him just to see how his argument goes and where it leads. So you don't have to be talking to a liar, you could be talking to anybody. Okay, if you catch someone out, then this is very similar to catch someone, well, no, let me talk about that one in a second. If you catch someone out, you might catch them in the middle of a crime, or you might catch them in the middle of doing something wrong. So that's why I've put red-handed here, because normally when you catch someone red-handed, you catch them in the middle of the crime. But yeah, if you catch someone out, you notice when they're wrong and you, or when they're doing something wrong, something illegal or something dodgy, something nasty, and you catch them out. So I've put underneath here another one which is similar, but call someone out on is for mistakes. If you catch someone out, it's usually because they've done something wrong, something illegal, something nasty, something not nice. Whereas if you call someone out on their mistakes, you tell them about a mistake they've made. Not about a crime they've committed, but about a mistake they've made. Now, if you give something away, you reveal a secret. So you might say, when I heard him, his accent gave him away as a foreigner. Or his accent gives him away as a Frenchman. Something like that. Reveals him to be a Frenchman. Okay, that's all of 52. On to 53. If you adhere to the rules, that means you follow the rules. But if you abide by the law, that means you obey the law. Use adhere to for rules or principles, and use abide by for laws. Okay? This is for the legal side of things, and this is for rules, games, principles. Now, if something goes against your principles, it contradicts your principles. It's the opposite to what you believe, or the principles that you live by. It's the opposite to those principles. So go against just means contradict, or maybe even disagree with, but usually contradict. It goes against your principles, it contradicts your principles. If you catch up with someone, it could be in a race where you just catch up with them, or it could be studying, and if you catch up, maybe you've missed 3 weeks of school, if you catch up with the rest of the class, you manage to do all the work that you've missed and you're now at the same level again. Now, impose on. You can impose a punishment on someone, and that's what the judge does when he decides someone's punishment when they're found not guilty. But that is probably not as common as the other way it's used, which is when you say this. You say, I don't want to impose on you, but, and it means I don't want to inconvenience you, but I'm going to. So when you impose on someone, you inconvenience them in some way. It might be because you want them to put you up, to accommodate you. You want to stay at their house for a few days. Maybe you're visiting a friend in another town, and you might say, I don't want to impose on you, but can you put me up for a couple of days? Can I stay at your place? So yeah, inconvenience someone. Now, if you sign something over to someone else, it means that you give them the ownership of something. So you could sign your car over to someone else. You could sign your house over to someone else. And it means literally give them that car or give them that house and sign all the deeds so that they are the rightful owner of the car or the house. If you sign up with something, you just register. So you can sign up with Facebook, you can sign up with YouTube, you can sign up with Twitter, whatever. If the judge lets you off, he gives you either no punishment, even though you're guilty, or he gives you a lenient punishment, a punishment which is not harsh, which is not severe, but very, very lenient. So if you are guilty of committing any crimes, you do hope that the judge lets you off. Now, if you want to make regulations or laws or rules stricter, you need to tighten them up or toughen up regulations, yeah? So it's connected to rules and laws, and I think this whole chapter was. But when you tighten something up, you make it stricter. So you could tighten up migration controls. You could tighten up anything, basically. But it just means when you crack down on something, when you get more and more, when you get stricter and stricter about some area of the law. When you roll out a new product, you introduce a new product. However, you can also roll out legislation. So you can roll out a product, launch a product, or you can roll out legislation, roll out a new law, in which case it's identical to bring in legislation or laws. But I want to make it clear that you can't bring in a product. You could bring out a product. That would work with products. Bring out a new product, roll out a new product, launch a new product. But you bring in legislation, but you can roll out legislation. So there you go, very illogical, I know, but phrasal verbs are. Now, if you go through something terrible, that means that you suffer, you experience something nasty, and it's always negative, these two. The idea is that when you go through something, it's not nice. So you might go through a divorce, and if you get through the divorce, it means you get to the other side of it. You're no longer going through it, you're no longer suffering. So both of these are about negative things, and it means experience something difficult and negative. If you vote on something, this just means you vote. I mean, to vote on a bill or to vote on a law, it means to have a vote concerning that law. But remember, you can also vote for, in favour of, a law, or against a law. So there is vote on, vote for, and vote against. All of those prepositions work with vote. Any more questions about that, put them under the video. Now, 54 was about technology. If you call up something on your screen, you could call up a menu, you could call up a web page. It just means make that web page turn up, show up on your screen. Now, something you never call up are pop-up adverts or pop-ups. Nobody ever calls these up, but they come up anyway, they appear anyway. So pop-ups are things which nobody likes, and I'm sure many of you have some kind of ad blocker to deal with these. I hope you turn those off, by the way, when you watch these videos, so that you help me to carry on making these videos. Something worth thinking about if you have got an ad blocker. I certainly have, by the way. I wouldn't want to watch all these pop-ups. Now, if your screen goes off, it suddenly stops working. If your computer goes off, it suddenly stops working without you turning it off. It just goes off. And the same for the lights, by the way. If the lights suddenly went off in this room, you wouldn't be able to see me. It's quite dark outside, you see, so if the lights went off, you wouldn't be able to see me. And if the computer goes off, you don't turn it off, it just suddenly crashes. When you turn it off, we say you shut down the computer or you turn it off. Now, these are opposites, go off and come on. If the lights suddenly come on again, It means they went off first, and then maybe a minute later, maybe my wife has flicked the fuse box switch and all the lights come back on. But yeah, it's normally when you have had nothing to do with it. You say, oh, the lights suddenly came on. How did that happen? Or your computer could do it as well, maybe. Maybe your cat's in the room and it jogs the mouse, and because the mouse has been moved, it's been jogged, the computer will come on automatically. And so you think, hey, why did the computer come on? Ah, the cat turned it on. Okay. Now, if you log on, you simply go online, you log on, or you go onto that web page, and you can log off as well when you come out of the sign out is very often used as well. Sign in, sign out. I see on a lot of websites. But yeah, basically log on and log off. I think it used to be just for the very first screen on a computer, but think of it as sign in, sign out, log on, log off. If you set up some new software, you install some new software. So I bought a new printer yesterday, and I set it up last night, and there were problems basically with the promotion which they were offering, and I quite liked the sound of the promotion. It was quite cheap to get new ink. I want to do a lot of printing this year, and yeah, I had to call them just in order to set up this particular promotion deal where I get ink delivered to me. Okay, if something fades in and fades out, if it fades in, it gradually comes in, and if it fades out, it gradually comes out. Now, this could be about music or pictures. On my video editing software, if I put music on the video, I can fade it in and fade it out. So make it gradually come in and get louder, and gradually go out and get quieter. So that's quite common. You can do it with a picture though, and make the picture fade in and fade out. If something wipes out your hard drive, it means completely destroys all the information on your hard drive. And so you might say, all my work was wiped out yesterday, and unfortunately I didn't back anything up, so I've lost it all. That's why I do back up all the stuff which I've got on my hard drive, and hopefully, fingers crossed, I'll never lose it all. Now, you can also use this like an adjective, but you need a hyphen when you do. If you've got backup power, it's emergency power. Personally, I've got 2 online connections at the moment. I've got my main online connection, and I've got a backup connection, so that when, or not when, but if there are any problems, I can move on to the backup online, the backup signal. And it means that I can still have the lesson no matter what. Nothing will stop the lesson from taking place. Okay, if you've got a printer, you might need to warm up the printer first before it starts working. So warm up is used in sport, yeah, when you do that, and if it's for a printer, you literally want it to warm up so that you can use it. And it's similar here to heat up some food when you just make it a little bit hotter in order to eat. I had to heat up some roast today because there was some left, some lovely roast dinner left from yesterday. Okay, if you tune into a radio station, you find a radio station, and it literally means take the FM dial and move it up so that you can tune into your favourite radio station. If you wire something up, you connect all the wires, and I'm sure you all, like I do, as I do, I'm sure you all have a massive pile of wires under your computer, and you need to wire it up when you set it up. So we all have to wire up stuff nowadays. If something seizes up, it means it gets stuck. And I think we very often use this one with the engine seized up. And it means it couldn't move anymore, it got stuck. So it means stop working, usually because something gets stuck. If you plug something in, you connect it, and if you unplug it, you disconnect it. And if you do something up on your clothes, look, I'm doing up the buttons on my shirt, and if I undo them, I do that. Okay? Wrap up presents and unwrap presents. Tie up something and untie something. There's a pattern here. Please pay attention to it. 55 is about food. Now, if you pick at or peck at your food, you eat very, very little and in small amounts. If you wolf down your food, or gobble it down, or gulp down your drink, or gobble it up, both of them work, gobble down and gobble up, it means you're eating or drinking with gulp down, because gulp means, yeah, it means swallow, it means gulp. All of these mean very quickly and in large amounts. Yeah, quickly and in large amounts, slowly and in small amounts. But if you eat something up, you eat it completely. If you drink something up, you drink it completely. And if you ask the person in the pub for a top up, that means you want them to fill it back to the top of the glass. So it's another one. If you eat out, you go to a restaurant. If you eat in, you stay at home. Pretty easy, that one. If you send out for pizza, you order a delivered pizza. Send out for is when you want food delivered to your house. You send out for pizza. If you chop up the vegetables or slice up the bread, then you're literally cutting them up. We'd use chop for vegetables, harder vegetables, and slice for cake and bread. Slice up the cake, slice up the bread. If food disagrees with you, it makes you feel sick. Quite strange, but we say, oh, that whatever it was, I don't know, that curry last night disagreed with me. It made me feel sick. If you cut something out, then you give it up. I think we've done this already. Your doctor might say you need to cut out all these very fatty foods. You need to cut out all these fry-ups. You need to give up smoking, blah, blah, blah. A fry-up is like a typical English breakfast. You've got sausages, eggs, and even the bread is fried in thick oil. My dad used to love a good fry-up. He always had fry-ups for breakfast and lunch. Okay, if something fills you up, it makes you feel full. Yeah, some food is very filling and it fills you up and you can say, oh, I can't eat anymore. I'm completely full up. Okay. Put on weight means to get fatter, simply, to put on weight, but this is quite a formal way of saying it. Not very formal, but it's neutral. But it's more formal than, you know, stuff your face or something like that. It's not really stuff your face, it means increase your weight, it means get fatter. If you wash your food down, it means you take a drink in order, maybe the food is stuck a little bit in your throat and you decide, oh, I need to wash that down, and you wash it down with some liquid. It helps it go down your throat, so it helps you swallow. If you drink to someone's health, or if you drink to the happy couple, or if you drink to someone's happiness, you're making a toast to them and raising your glass, and everybody else raises their glass and maybe stands up while they listen to your toast, and you drink to their health or you drink to their happiness. If you're eating soup, you may like, as I do, dipping your bread into the soup. I always dip my bread into the soup and I think it's much tastier. Now when you dip your bread into the soup, the bread soaks up all the soup. So soak up means absorb, but please remember that you can also soak up the atmosphere in a nightclub, and you can even soak up the sunshine. Strange, but you can soak up the sunshine. When you go sunbathing, you obviously soak up a lot of sunshine. Now if you water something down, you make it more dilute, so even exams can be watered down, but usually, well, not usually, it's very often used for just you watered down the whiskey or something like that. And if you're cooking food, you might leave the saucepan on the hob and the food starts to boil, and in the end it spills over the soup maybe. It spills over the saucepan edge, in which case it boils over, it goes over the edge. But this one can certainly be used with conflict and violence. Conflict has spilled over the border, something like that, spilt, sorry. Conflict has spilt over the border. You can also say that violence is, no, not boiling over actually, no, violence has spilt over into neighbouring towns, something like that. Okay, if there are any questions about these phrasal verbs, please ask below. If it's about one of these phrasal verbs, I'll answer. If it's about something else unrelated that has no bearing, it doesn't bear on any of these phrasal verbs, I'm sorry, but I can't answer it. You've got to put your questions on the relevant videos, and as long as the question bears on the topic, I'll be delighted to answer it. And as long as I see it, there are a lot of questions and sometimes I don't get round to answering all the questions, so I'm sorry about that. Okay, thanks everyone for watching. I hope to see you all soon, and please like the video if you've enjoyed it. Thanks a lot.